Dear all, on behalf of the University of Bergen, it's with great pleasure that I welcome you to this year's announcement of the Holberg Prize and the Nils Klim Prize. 2023 marks 20 years since the Norwegian Parliament decided to establish the Holberg Prize. I am therefore honored to welcome you to the Holberg Prize anniversary year. The Holberg Prize is a great recognition of individuals who have had decisive impact on international research. The prize, then and now, is intended to acknowledge groundbreaking and pioneering academic work within the humanities, social sciences, law, and theology. It has become a distinguished and esteemed award given either within one of its subject areas or for interdisciplinary research. And crucially, it showcases the importance of these fields globally. In addition to the Holberg Prize, the Holberg Board also awards the Nils Klim Prize. And this prize is awarded to young scholars working in or being from the Nordic countries. The Holberg Prize, through its 20 years of existence, has contributed to honoring a long list of outstanding academics. And it has been an invaluable recognition of our academic responsibility to create space for critical thinking, free research, open debate in the spirit of Ludvig Holberg. The plans for this anniversary are ambitious. The year will be filled with more informative and thought-provoking events than ever before. The Holberg Week has facilitated also before unforgettable events and meetings, and also this June the Holberg Week will be filled with activities that will make the Laureates' work known to a wider audience. As we come together to celebrate this milestone, we do so with an awareness of the challenges we face. The war in Europe is now in its second year. The climate crisis confronts us with questions that we do not yet have answers to. The harsh effects of these challenges are felt by us all. In confronting complex challenges, our academic values will be paramount. Today, and also for the next 20 years, we need researchers who fearlessly push the boundaries of what we know. We need scholars who contribute with interpretations of the present and the past, and we need spaces where ideas can meet across traditions and intellectual institutions. And most of all, we need an open, critical conversation that can provide us with understanding beyond what is immediately experienced. With this in mind, it is with great excitement that I give the floor to the academic director of the Holberg Prize, Professor Bjørn Enge Bertelsen. He will announce the Holberg Prize and the Nils Klim Laureates for the year 2023.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Professor Margareth Hagen, Rector of the University of Bergen. Each year, the Holberg Board awards 2 prizes in the academic fields of the humanities, social sciences, law, and theology. These prizes are the main Holberg Prize, excuse me, and the Nils Klim Prize. As also noted by the Rector, the Holberg Prize celebrates its 20th anniversary in 2023. The prizes are awarded by the board, the Holberg Board, on behalf of the University of Bergen and the Norwegian government, on the recommendation of academic committees. These committees consist of outstanding scholars in the fields covered by the prizes. The prizes celebrate groundbreaking academic achievement in these research areas and emphasize their broad importance. The award ceremony for the Holberg Prize and the Nils Klim Prize takes place in Bergen in June every year. This year's ceremony will be held here at the University Aula on the 8th of June. And now first to the Holberg Prize, awarded annually to scholars who have made outstanding contributions to research in the areas covered by the prize, either within one discipline or through interdisciplinary work. The laureate must have had a decisive influence on international research. The value of the prize is 6 million kroner, or approximately 550,000 euros. On behalf of the University of Bergen, and on the recommendation of the Holberg Committee, it is a great pleasure for me to announce that the board of the Holberg Prize has decided that this year's Holberg Prize shall be awarded to Professor Joan Martinez Alier. Professor Joan Martinez Alier works at the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona in the Department of Economics and Economic History, where he has carried out most of his research. Joan Martinez Alier is among the world's leading scholars of ecological economics, political ecology, and environmental justice. Furthermore, he's a central figure not only in ecological economics and the study of environmental justice struggles, but also in the currently burgeoning movement for degrowth. After graduating in economics from Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona in 1961, he continued his studies in agricultural economics at St. Anthony's College, Oxford, where he was based between 1966 and 1973, as well as the period 1984 to 1985. He holds a PhD in economics from Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona from 1976. Martinez Alier became full professor in the Department of Economics and Economic History at Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona in 1976, and he became emeritus in 2009. Professor Martinez Alier has held visiting positions at a number of prestigious institutions around the world, including being visiting professor at the Free University of Berlin, at Stanford University, and at the University of California, Davis. In addition to receiving numerous fellowships and awards, he's also professor emeritus at Latin American School of Social Sciences Institute, Flaxo, in Quito, Ecuador, and in 2014, he became an honorary doctor at Universidad Nacional de Córdoba in Argentina. Martinez Alier is not only an exceedingly prolific researcher, but also an impressive institution builder, being a founding member of the International Society for Ecological Economics. He has also co-founded the Institute of Environmental Science and Technology at the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona, and he has served as a member of the Scientific Committee of the European Environment Agency from 2000 to 2008. Chair of the Holberg Committee, Professor Heike Krieger, will now present the committee's review of the contributions of Joan Martinez Alier's work.
Professor Joan Martinez Alier is a world-leading scholar of ecological economics, political ecology, and environmental justice. His transdisciplinary research integrates social and natural sciences, proposing a humanities-driven form of economics. He is based at the Autonomous University of Barcelona in the Department of Economics and Economic History. Martinez Alier is highly influential in diverse fields. These range from anthropology, geography, environmental studies, political economy, to agrarian studies and the analysis of food systems. He is a major figure and leading public intellectual in the burgeoning movement for degrowth and agroecology. Analytically clear, his critiques of mainstream economic theory raise questions about the dominant focus on economic growth as the sole metric of a good economy. His approach rejects economic models based on extracting resources from the environment to support material accumulation and consumption. Instead, his economic framework centers human and environmental flourishing, creating an alternative, pluralistic theory of value for determining economic judgments. The empirical basis of his theory draws on extensive and long-term research conducted in a variety of global contexts. Based on a participatory research method, his analysis emerges from dialogue with indigenous and non-Western forms of life and knowledge. A central concern of Martinez-Allier's work is how environmental questions are inseparable from analysis of historical injustices and ongoing inequalities. These injustices raise questions concerning the ecological debt that so-called developed nations owe formerly colonized countries. Two of his most influential books are Ecological Economics, Energy, Environment and Society from 1987, and The Environmentalism of the Poor, a study of ecological conflicts and valuation from 2002. Ecological economics traces the history of ecological critiques of economics from the 1860s to the 1940s. It was a major catalyst in the development of political ecology through its articulation of a different tradition of economic thought. The environmentalism of the poor examines the relationship between environmental conflicts and poverty. The book overturns assumptions that there is a necessary conflict between improving the economic well-being of the poor and attaining environmental sustainability. Martinez-Ayer is a founding member of the International Society for Ecological Economics. He also founded the Institute of Environmental Science and Technology at the Autonomous University of Barcelona. The institute is a multidisciplinary center promoting the study of the nature and causes of environmental problems and seeks constructive policies that enable transition to a sustainable economy. A key part of his work is the Environmental Justice Atlas that documents environmental justice struggles around the world. Martinez-Ayer has the unusual distinction of both anticipating and actively engaging with the interrelated planetary challenges of poverty, climate change, and food security. His innovative theories and membership continue to build the capacity of scholars and policymakers to address these intersecting crises of global economic life. Joan Martinez-Ayer is undoubtedly a highly worthy recipient of the 2023 Holberg Prize.
Thank you, Professor Heike Krieger, for the committee's review. And now to the Nils Klim Prize. The prize is awarded annually to a researcher under 35 years of age from or in a Nordic country in the fields covered by the Holberg Prize. The prize is awarded to researchers who have made outstanding contributions, either within one discipline or through interdisciplinary work. In the assessment of the nominated candidate, the independence and innovative qualities of the researcher's work are deemed particularly important. The committee also takes into account whether the research contribution is especially outstanding or promising in light of the scholar's age, the nature of the research project, and traditions in the researcher's academic field. The value of the prize is 500,000 Norwegian kroner, or approximately 45,000 euros. On behalf of the University of Bergen, and on the recommendation of the Nils Klim Committee, it is now my great pleasure to announce that the board of the Holberg Prize has decided that this year's Nils Klim Prize shall be awarded to Associate Professor Simona Zetterberg Nielsen. Simona Zetterberg Nielsen, born 1988, is a Danish literary scholar who works at the Faculty of Arts at Aarhus University in Denmark. The chair of the Nils Klim Committee, Professor Astradur Eysteinsson, will now present the committee's review of the contributions of Simona Zetterberg Nielsen's work. Professor Eysteinsson's review will be followed by a greeting from Mr. Ola Borten Moe, the Norwegian Minister of Research and Higher Education.
The Nils Klim Committee has decided to recommend that Simona Zetterberg Nielsen be the recipient of the 2023 Nils Klim Prize. Simona Zetterberg Nielsen is Associate Professor of Scandinavian Studies at the Faculty of Arts at Aarhus University, Denmark. She pursued her university education at Aarhus University, completing her PhD degree in 2017 with the dissertation Fictionality and the Formation of the Novel, with a focus on the invention of 18th century Danish fiction. While Aarhus University has been her academic base, she has been a visiting student and later a visiting scholar at academic institutions in Europe, Australia, and the USA. Zetterberg Nielsen has also been an active participant in international scholarly collaboration, especially in the areas of narratology, the history of the novel, and fictionality. Throughout her academic career, Zetterberg Nielsen has been prolific on several academic fronts, teaching and supervising, editing journals and books, and organizing conferences, as well as giving lectures and publishing in both English and Danish, a bilingual activity which is exemplary in itself. Zetterberg Nielsen's achievements have been acknowledged with Aarhus University's award for Best PhD Dissertation in the Humanities, with a number of substantial postdoctoral grants, and most recently with an Inga Lehmann grant to establish a research group entitled The Science of Fiction, How Fiction Shaped Science and Science Shaped Fiction. Much of Zetterberg Nielsen's scholarly work has centered around the concept of fictionality and its various implications and manifestations. Unlike the term literariness, which has been important in demarcating the specificity of literature and its expressiveness, fictionality has in recent scholarship come to designate the relation of literature to lived reality, the world of individual and social experiences. This entails that fictionality exists in dialectical relation to factuality. Zetterberg Nielsen has fruitfully explored the ways in which the concept has been applied by her predecessors, and she has wielded it masterfully in her own studies of both individual texts and larger corpuses, most notably the 18th century Danish novel in its entirety. She has also approached the concept theoretically, analyzing its rhetorical, communicative aspects and its pragmatic, context-dependent relevance. Fictionality, as she points out, is not limited to literary discourse, for it plays a vital role in everyday conversation, and she is now turning her attention to the ways in which it pertains to science. The broad relevance of her impressive scholarship is highlighted by one of the key predicaments of our times, the unreliability of mankind's ever-broadening technical modes of communication. For all the reasons stated, Simona Zetterberg Nielsen is a most worthy recipient of the 2023 Nils Klim Prize.
The Holberg Prize honors outstanding scientific work in the field of humanities, social sciences, law and theology. This year we honor Joan Martinez from the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona. Dear Professor Martinez, congratulations to you on your great achievements. The Holberg Prize is a celebration of you as a scholar and of the whole field of ecological economics, political ecology and environmental justice. I would also like to congratulate Simona Zetterberg Nielsen at Aarhus University in Denmark on the Nils Klim Prize for her outstanding work on the history of the Danish novel. Norway is a knowledge nation, but most of the challenges we face as a society are global. We depend on research-based knowledge and experience to understand and resolve these challenges. The Holberg Prize is important to celebrate excellence in research. On behalf of the Norwegian government, congratulations as the Holberg Prize and Nils Klim Prize Laureates for 2023, and welcome to Bergen and Norway in June.
Thank you, Professor Astradur Eysteinsson, for presenting the committee's review. Thank you to the Minister for his greeting to the Holberg Prize laureate. And last but not least, thank you to Tore Bordal for having provided us with two beautiful musical pieces today. First, we heard Les Collines de Anna Capri by Debussy, and just now we enjoyed Grieg's Summer's Eve, or Sommeraften, as it's called in Norwegian. We now move on in our program, and I'm happy to be able to welcome you all to a brief conversation about our two prize winners. For this purpose, I would like to welcome onto the stage Professor Jørgen Sejersted and Professor Håvard Hårstad. Welcome, both of you. Please join me. I think in order to make this a nice conversation, we could start with talking a bit about the Holberg Prize winner first. And in that regard, I'm very happy to have with me on stage here Professor Håvard Hårstad. Hårstad is a professor of geography here at the University of Bergen, and he has particularly worked with social change, climate politics, and sustainability. He has worked both in Latin America and in European contexts, and he is currently the director of the Center for Climate and Energy Transformation here at UIB. So welcome. Let me start with you, Håvard, asking, as we also heard from the committee, the Holberg Prize winner is an outstanding scholar in his field, or more perhaps, or more correctly, we could say fields in the plural. Could you provide us with a bit of more in-depth knowledge as to what his field is and his research is about?
Sure. Well, let me first say I'm extremely excited about this year's award. I think it raises some really important critical questions, and I really look forward to June when we will have him here and be able to discuss these things with him. So as we heard from the committee, he is one of the sort of founding figures of this field called ecological economics. So he's been trained in economics, but has taken a quite critical view of that field. He has also taken input from anthropology and other social sciences and the humanities, and really tried to sort of situate the economy, try to understand the economy as part of sort of the larger ecological, socio-ecological system of the world. So his critique against mainstream economics is basically that it's sort of too narrow, just looking at the things we can measure in price, while he is really interested in how does this to try to understand the economy as just sort of a subfield of the larger system, and how can we reshape the economy so it doesn't go sort of beyond the planetary boundaries. That's an extremely important question.
How would you say that Joan Martinez Alier has shaped, changed, or redirected that particular field? I mean, to put differently, how does political ecology, for instance, how has political ecology changed after his research or after his research contributions?
So I would say, so he, early in his career, he was part of a really important figure in establishing this field of ecological economics. And this field has sort of grown and spawned different directions, in particular political ecology, which today is an enormous field, has big conferences. There are lots of people in Norway who are taking part in this field and organize conferences, etc. So that's sort of one of the main influences, how this has developed into political ecology. But it's also feeding into a really big debate that we're seeing emerging now, both within academia and without academia, which I would call the degrowth debate or the degrowth movement, which is taking many of his ideas and using them to sort of critique and question sort of the main economic model that we operate under today. And primarily, and I would say this is the prize winner's critique, is that it assumes that we can keep growing the economy. We can keep producing goods, we can keep producing resources, and Martinez Alier's concepts are really trying to show that this is not in line with ecological boundaries. So we need to find other models. So they are looking to social justice movements. His book, The Environmentalism of the Poor, was a huge influence in trying to sort of show how important these environmental struggles around the world are and how they're interconnected. And try to really discuss what sort of other institutions can we come up with, how can we change the existing institutions in order to challenge this growth paradigm that we are in at the moment.
Mm. And he works globally, in a sense, yes?
Yeah. So it's really important that he's trying to, I think scholars in the past, I mean, I've worked on Latin America, and then you kind of communicate with other Latin American scholars, but he's really shown how you can connect these environmental justice movements from one continent to other continents, like Latin America, of course, but he's also been very inspired by movements in India, for example, and in other places. And in recent years, he's been very important in creating this environmental justice atlas, which is mapping environmental conflicts all over the world, including several here in Norway.
In what ways would you say that the research of the Holberg Prize winner, Joan Martinez Alier, is significant for the whole range of the Holberg Prize? As you know, this prize covers research within the sciences, humanities, law, and theology. I mean, is he singling out a single discipline in a sense, or does he work very broadly? I mean, you've answered a part of it, but
Yeah.
would you elaborate?
No, I say he's very broad, and I mean the word sort of transdisciplinary is very often used to describe his work. It was also used by the committee, and that means he is really, I mean, he's trained in a discipline, right? And he uses the tools of his discipline, economics. But he's also sort of taking a step outside of that, drawing influences from other fields, which makes him, I would say, interdisciplinary, but also working with the non-academics. To understand these environmental justice issues, he's working with activists from different places in the world and trying to bring their ideas into his scholarship. So it's really a transdisciplinary scholar, and I think we see that in how his work has inspired and been used across many different disciplines.
So in a sense, his work would also then be, from what you say, a work of translation in a sense from actually ongoing conflicts that he identifies, and to translate them into an academic setting or analysis or language.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's a really good example of how you can use sort of theoretical and conceptual work, which is what a lot of his work is. He's using or developing concepts like social metabolism or energy return on investment. So concepts that if you try to analyze the economy through these sorts of concepts, you get a kind of a different picture of the economy than what you would use from what I would call the sort of mainstream economics. So it's a lot about conceptual development, but also about linking it to sort of real-world practice. And I would say, I mean, my impression of his environmentalism of the poor is that it's really a scholar who has been sort of traveling around and talking to activists and then try to sort of think with their ideas and try to bring their ideas into dialogue with this academic, sort of more sort of conceptual, theoretical concepts that we're using. So it's really, I think sometimes we tend to sort of either work theoretically or we work with sort of outside society. But this is, I think, a really good example of how you can sort of link the two.
I think many of the laureates we've had with the Holberg Prize have been daring, or they have broken new ground. Yeah? Some have been also deemed as somewhat controversial in their fields. How would you situate Joan Martinez Allier in that kind of trajectory of Holberg Prize laureates, in a sense?
Well, I mean, the idea that's sort of emerging now from his work and that he's also engaging with, the idea of degrowth, is of course very controversial and very daring in a sense. And I'm really looking forward to the debates that we can have around this in June. I mean, the idea is that we need to shift away from this model that we have now of continuous economic growth. But if you look around, that seems like you know, a political proposal. But if you look around, a lot of our institutions, or maybe all of our institutions in the current economic model, are built up around this idea that we need continuous growth. And he's very critical of that. And that also means he's critical of the idea of sustainable development. I mean, he critiques the Brinton Commission for its assumption that we can have you know, green growth. He's quite critical that that's possible within sort of the current way that we organize the economy. He's also critical of the IPCC, the United Nations Climate Panel, for not really taking this degrowth ideas into account. So it's really, so that part of his work is really sort of questioning some of the fundamental structures of our society. And I think that challenges, I look forward to sort of challenging him on sort of how do we concretely move forward with this? What sort of limitations and weaknesses does he see with this kind of idea? And what are kind of the promising pathways for moving forward with this idea? But I think it's in the sense that the Holberg Prize wants to be daring and controversial. I think this year's prize really does that. Opens up for some really important questions.
I was going to ask you as a final question, what's the broader societal significance of his work? But I can see lots of uses for that. But would you like to just add a few other points as a
Well,
final?
it's basically sort of how do we survive as a species? And I think that's a pretty important question.
I think we would all agree with that. Thank you very much, Håvard. We now move on to the second panelist here, Professor Jørgen Sejersted. Jørgen Sejersted is the professor of Scandinavian literature at the University of Bergen, and he has particularly worked on Nordic literature. His research focuses, for instance, on literature from around the 1700s in the Nordic countries, and Professor Sejersted is an expert on Ludvig Holberg. This is, of course, particularly apt today as the 2023 Nils Klim Prize winner's work includes that of Ludvig Holberg. So, welcome, Jørgen.
Thank you.
And I will start in the same way as I started with Håvard, as we've also heard from the committee. The Nils Klim Prize winner is an outstanding young scholar in her field. Could you provide us with a more in-depth knowledge as to what that field and research is, as you see it?
Yes, thank you. Well, first I'd like to say also I think it's a very good choice from the committee. And, well, the field of study, two fields in a way. You have the theory of fictionality, which is you know, the modern theoretical discussion about what fictionality is, and then fictionality as a phenomenon not only in fiction but also in non-fiction. So you can have sort of intratextual rhetorical fictionality, certain movements in the language which signals you're moving from a representation of reality to a representation of fictionality, kind of fictionality. So that's a study. It can be like metaphors or examples or hypotheticals, what might have been, what might be, conjectures, and of course the movements of the narrator. So you have different sort of rhetorical tools for fictionality occurring in non-fiction also, as well as in fiction. And also you have extra-textual kinds of signaling fictionality. So that is one, this is the theoretical discussion about fictionality as a tool. And then on the other hand, what is, in my opinion, you know, what is close to my own research area is her research on the 18th century novel. And of course, the 18th century novel is sort of the period of the birth of the modern novel. And the authors in the 18th century, they are really struggling or playing around with this fictionality and the representation of reality and representation of fictionality. It's a lot of discussion and uncertainty about that. So there's a close connection, of course, between her empirical studies of the history of literature and the novel of the 18th century. And she really brings forth some very interesting texts, which I think have been completely forgotten, some Danish novels. So nobody has read them in 100 years, or much less done research on them. But she really manages to make them relevant and interesting, and part of that discussion of what are, you know, the rhetoric and the elements of fictionality. So in that way, she brings a historical momentum, or the historicity of the rhetoric of fictionality, and she establishes that, I think, in a very nice way. So it's very interesting, and it's groundbreaking, I think, within the history of literature.
Thank you. And following up on that, I mean, all the Nils Klim Prize winners we've had, they have, of course, gone on to have very impressive academic careers, and they've already at a young age, or being juniors in their field, they've already started shaping that field and changing its direction in a way. How would you say that this year's Nils Klim Prize winner does that?
Yeah, well, she's writing, publishing a lot, and she is, you know, already co-working with, you know, prominent scholars in the field, co-authoring with Catherine Gallagher of Berkeley and other prominent scholars. So she's part of it, and she's also part of a center in Aarhus, a study of fictionality center there, and so she's part of that. And I think that one of the things that she really brings to the table there is exactly these novels, you know, the new material, new empirical material for investigation that differs a bit, because when you establish sort of the history of fictionality, and you very often, and in international research, you use, you know, the established canon. Some works everybody or all the researchers have heard about. You always find the same works, but now she's bringing in some new works, and they are a bit different. You know, it's a lot of invention, a lot of fantasy, lot of different aspects actually of fictionality. So I think she broadens sort of the material, the empiric material and basis for the study of the historical emergence of the rhetoric of fictionality and the discussion of fictionality. So I think it's, yes, it's fascinating actually. And I might also add, she's in the field of dissemination, as the committee said, and I think it should be underlined that she's great at disseminating and writing about this in a very clear, understandable, interdisciplinary way in Danish, and also being part of the international, front research. So she combines that in a very impressive way, I think.
Very good. I mean, the Holberg Prize covers these 4 fields: humanities, social sciences, law, and theology. Would you say that she relates in a way to all of these fields, or is she highly specialized?
Well, I think the basis in these not very well-known works of the 18th century, that's highly specialized in a way. But of course, when she uses that as a basis for analyzing fictionality and the rhetoric of fictionality, that is also, as I said, in non-fiction. And that, of course, is very relevant to, I think, well, it's the area of literature and law when you study, elements of fictionality in texts of law, where it's very important, of course, that they represent reality, but then you will have some elements of fictionality which you can identify and analyze. And that pertains, I think, to all kinds of non-fiction and of course, social sciences and theology. And as I hear now, she's establishing a center for the science and fictionality, and of course, also in science. So not only these areas of the prize, but I think in all areas of research and science, all kinds of texts, we have these elements of fictionality, and it's important to identify them and to analyze them and to use them as a basis for discussion and consciousness about fictionality and critique, perhaps.
So in a sense, she incorporates the kind of broad, interdisciplinary might not be the right term, but the broad approach of Holberg, in a sense.
Absolutely, but as I said, with a basis in a very sort of specialized empirical study.
Yeah. Would you say that this year's Nils Klim Prize winner is already a distinctive researcher within her field of research? I mean, yes. Is she gaining recognition?
Yes, as we heard, I think she already has won many prizes, and she is establishing her own center, so she is recognized in her field. But I think in the humanities, prizes like this, we should be better at acknowledging each other, and prizes like this, they contribute to that. So I think it's very well deserved and important. Yeah.
Excellent. You mentioned it already. I mean, she works on fiction, and she works on fiction or fictionality in relation to, or in contradistinction to, literariness. But she also takes on science and the kind of fiction needed in order for the facts to be clarified, in a sense. Yeah.
Yes.
If I understood this correctly. So what I mean, in light of that, in light of her broad horizon, in a sense, in her approach to her field, what would you say is the societal significance, in a sense, of her work?
Well, I think the societal, big words,
Yes.
But I think that, well, if we left behind sort of what many people thought about postmodernism, sort of merging of reality and fictionality, you can say what's what. So this is another way of posing that question, the opposite in a way, because you see there are elements of fictionality in all kinds of representations of reality, but they can be identified and they can be, as I said, discussed, and we should be aware of them, and we should be conscious about it and about the historicity of discourse, the historicity of how we speak, not as something incomprehensible or impenetrable, but something that can be identified and analyzed. And I think that's very important for everybody, for society, and the way we understand ourselves and the way we represent reality to each other.
And it demonstrates the broad significance of the humanities for also other sciences and our contemporary society, I would say. Thank you for that, Jørgen. I would like to thank both panelists for having shed considerable more light on the academic contributions of Joan Martinez Allier and Simona Zetterberg Nielsen. Please give them a round of applause. Let me remind the audience that the awards ceremonies and other events related to the Holberg Prize will take place here in Bergen from the 6th to the 8th of June and in Oslo on the 9th of June this year. So please join us then. To conclude, and on behalf of the Holberg Board, I would like to extend my warmest congratulations to Professor Joan Martinez Allier and Associate Professor Simona Zetterberg Nielsen on being awarded their respective prizes. Congratulations. Thank you all also around the world for showing your interest by watching this event today, and thank you to those in the audience for having joined us here. Thank you.